Next, Ms. Nixon is going to give us an update and talk to us about the academic support updates for the charter schools. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Reiswick, members of the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you a little update on some different items that you will see on your agenda for this month. I believe you probably remember back in September, I gave you all this kind of one-sheeter on charter schools, and if you want another copy, I did bring extras if anybody wants one. A teacher's always prepared, right? But the way I thought this would be important is for us to continue to talk about this and charter work in these three kind of categories so that it makes sense that when I show back up, I can say, hi, we're here talking about the application section. Hi, this part is about opening and monitoring, and this is us as an authorizer. Because there are components that happen all year long, but we've also discussed that maybe what we would like to do is come to you at different times and kind of as I've found in the last 4.5 months, there are a lot of pieces and parts to this work. And so we're going to start with the application process. All I did was legitimately take what was on here and kind of give a timeline. So as you can see that currently on our website, we have our request for proposals. We put that up every year by KCS. All letters of intent are due on December 3rd, unless that happens on a non-business day, and then it's the next business day, which happens to be today. And I'm sure some of you are probably saying, ooh, did we get anything? Technically, they still have until 11:59 tonight, Central Standard Time, to turn it in, which I may set my alarm for 12:59 to wake up and check. But late in the afternoon, like right before I walked over here, we did get one letter that was sent to our charter authorizing. We have an email address as well. I have not had the opportunity to dig into it, but there has been an expressed interest, and I will be able to look at that more tomorrow. Applications are submitted in February. What I am here to talk to you about is the Charter Review Committee. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide, but that's going to be one of the items on the agenda tonight. I know we have said that we have a Charter Review Committee, and I think it's been attached just to applications only. But as we were going through our authorizing, I realized that if any of our charter schools want to change their charter for any reason, we are supposed to have a review committee that is to review and look at the amendments. So that charter review committee's role would be, yes, applications, but also expanded to amendments. And now that we're entering into our 9th year with Emerald, would be working with renewals as well. So my plan moving forward is that every year I would be bringing to you a charter review committee that would be for that calendar year. So this one is for the 2024 calendar year that would address any of the 3 items that would show up, whether it's the application, an amendment, or a renewal. When we do have an application, it would be similar. Most of you all went through this last year, where there is the written application with the state that goes against a state rubric and capacity interviews. And then you can see the remainder of the application timeline with recommendations and a board decision usually in March or April. What's on the board agenda tonight as item 9B is that list of charter review committee. That is in accordance to our KCS board policy, I-450, and that actually outlines members of different departments, parent members, et cetera, within Knox County. And so I have submitted to Dr. Reiswick and team, as well as to you, that list of charter members. As you look at it, you will see there is not only the memo, but I did take time to just put a second page that was a graph that legitimately took those board roles and kind of marked off why they were on that committee. Some I wanted you to see had participated previously, so we have some returning. My hope is that it becomes a cycle so that we have some that are returning and some that are new. And then I also added on there school districts because I felt it was really important to balance representation across all the districts. Additionally, I asked everybody as they were completing a form for me to state what of the different organizational, legal, human resources, financial experience they had, as well as if they were a parent, because those of you that sit on the board now, you're here as a board member, but you're also here as a parent. You don't take that hat off, so I feel like they get to serve in both roles. So if anybody has any questions about the Charter Review Committee, I'm happy to address any of that at this time.
Are there any questions at this time? Oh, Ms. Spike.
I just want to thank you for putting this all out there and really taking the time to make sure that you're covering all the spaces. This makes me feel better about that this year than last year, so thank you.
Thank you. I had too many things for this little area, so I'm... The other two items that are on here are in the open and monitors section. One being the Knox Prep agreement. You can see I kind of made them yellow and the little "You Are Here" logo. That will be on Knox Prep. Obviously, we have not completed any of the other items. That's going to be on the discussion for tonight as well. And then you will see also in the Emerald work, they already obviously have their agreement. You can see that we continue with their check-ins, monthly support, et cetera. They've done their 5-year review, and they will be up for a 10-year renewal next year. So the two items in particular tonight are 9C, which is the agreement with Knox Prep. We approved their application on April 27th, and our next step is to finalize that agreement to outline our working expectations. In the previous slide, you saw there where it says within 6 months, these are just authorizing standards that are recommended that we complete an agreement. I think due to the transition, et cetera, I mean, we're not going to get a fine. There's nothing like that. But due to the transition, I will be more knowledgeable in the next round to be able to ensure that we get that agreement. And hopefully we've worked really hard on getting this one in a better place so that we'll be able to use that as well. The other portion of the open and monitor that we have with Emerald is the performance review. Now that's going to be item 9A. The reason that is on there is in the agreement. In section 1.4, it states that every year we will be bringing at least annually a report to the board to talk about the performance both across academics, organization, and fiscally. And so that then comes to you all. The board voted in November of 2018 for this framework to be used that is being shared tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of do this in reverse order. Does anybody have any questions about the Emerald performance review? And I'm also going to ask Ron to step up and talk about a little bit of the fiscal part as well.
No?
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, just one thing that we would like to bring to the board's attention. So on the performance review that Teresa mentioned with Emerald, all of their metrics, they get a meet. We scored them as meet standard. If you go back and actually look at their operating statements, their financial reports as of June 30, and you try to crosswalk that back, there's a couple of metrics where you'll look at and you go, gee, this doesn't seem like they met the standard. What's going on? So what happened is Emerald spent some dollars, a considerable amount of dollars out of the reserve for capital needs, waiting for ESSER 3, waiting for the state to actually reimburse for that. So what happens is there was a timing difference, and we didn't feel like it was right to penalize them for something that they really had no control over, right? So they have plenty of resources. Emerald is really strong financially. Their current assets is something like 35 times more than their current liabilities. They have a they still have a healthy, like if you look at their cash today, it's like more than 60 days. If you look at, they've got a $1 million line of credit they don't even tap into. So they have plenty of resources. But if you went back and just did the math, and it could lead you to some erroneous conclusions. That's kind of the downsides. If you just look at a couple of metrics and you don't look at the full picture, it can give you the wrong impression. So we just felt like it wouldn't be fair to score them lower on something that they have no control over as they await for those. Those funds have come in and have been replenished. So anyway, they're in good shape financially. We just wanted to be really transparent that if any board member if they went back and looked at the financials and tried to crosswalk it back, you kind of go, wait a minute, what's going on here? So that's the only thing. We just wanted to bring that to your attention. Sure. Okay, thanks.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions about the Emerald performance framework?
No? Okay.
Okay, and then I'm looking at Gary Dupler to see, I don't know if we want to entertain questions now about the agreement or if we prefer to wait until later in the meeting.
I mean, I'm done with that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Teresa, but I think that would be more up to Ms. Owen. I believe she's provided some questions and a revision to talk about maybe some revised portions of the contract, but I think, did we want to talk about that later? Or? Okay. All right.
Yeah, that works.
Go ahead.
That works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so at your seat, you should have a copy of the charter agreement that has some red lines. And I want to be very clear that these are not all my revisions. So as I'm going to try to go through kind of quickly and let you know which are mine and which are not mine. Some of them were made by staff as a result of questions that I ask. So therefore, they made me do it. So as I was going through looking at different things, I'm going to try to do the red lines that you have and my questions at the same time. In the opening paragraph where it says governing body in line 6 of the charter agreement, it was defined further down in the agreement, and I think it made it confusing. And so I just asked for a definition to be scooched up into there. And so that is right around the middle of the paragraph, where after governing body, it says in parentheses, the Board of Directors of Knoxville Preparatory School. And then further down, this document requires, as part of this document, it says throughout it that the original application is to be attached. And when we got this last month, the original application was not attached. That was not actually attached until today. And so that is something that I asked for, and it is listed there as Exhibit 1, and the staff has pulled out the others and listed them as Exhibit 2 and 3, and those are also listed in the agenda. So if anyone wants to refer back to any of those are all there now. When we get to the next page, there were several legal references that went back and forth between whether they were listed as title and then chapter and then part, or whether it said TCA number. And so I thought it made it really confusing going back and forth between there, because some of them are the same thing. It made it a lot easier to see when they were all in the same format. So that is a change I asked for. Something that I have asked about, but that I think we would need to discuss a little bit, is further down in 1.1, any future waiver requests shall be approved by the KCBOE. So it says that any requests that have already been done have been approved, but I think it helps to be clear that if they're going to make a waiver request, that it should be approved.
Jennifer, can I speak to that real quick? Is that all right?
Sure.
Mr. Dupler, is that different from what we did with Emerald, and does that create some sort of problem with them, or is that it's a change that now requires them to come to us maybe in a way that Emerald did not?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Shiflett. I think, and I wanted Ms. Owen to kind of go through, the changes. But I guess and I hate to jump ahead, but I guess I will. A lot of these changes that she's suggesting, I believe, are kind of a cleanup type of thing, certainly with the TCA and things like that. I can't speak for Knox Prep, but, knowing their attorney, I wouldn't think there'd be any objection to those types of things. But when it comes to, the end of 1.1 on page 2, and I kind of highlighted a couple others on page 3 and page 6, maybe? Hold on. Well, 4 we can talk about, but, no, 8. So on those pages, I would certainly think that, that Knox Prep and their attorney, Chris McCarty, would want to take a look at that. And my suggestion would be, if there's no objection from the board members tonight, I could take this back to Knox Prep, and hopefully, knock on wood, have an answer by Thursday. But I would like for them to take a look at this to see if they have any objections. Yeah.
Okay, shall I go on?
Oh, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Related to 1.1, is that a role and a function of an authorizer after the initial contract is put into place? Can we technically approve future waivers? Is that our place to do that?
Good question. Mr. Diggler, do you know the answer?
I don't know if
Or
we really have
Ms.
any
Nixon?
authority to do that. I guess that's the question.
It's a good question.
So what they mostly recommend is allowing the schools to go directly to the state for waivers and then informing us and allowing the state to determine the waivers. If we decide that we need to be the approver of the waivers, then we do then have to pass that along to the state.
So it's possible, it's not common practice.
It
but
is
it's-
not common practice,
Okay,
correct?
thank you.
I would also be okay with language there that said something to the effect of that we would be informed when a waiver was requested. And an example I would give there is that recently, when we were discussing waivers, this board was told that our other charter school had not requested any waivers, but that wasn't accurate. So as long as there is language that ensures that this board is aware of any waivers that are being made, either way, I felt that language to say that we approved it would more greatly ensure that we were aware, but I'm fine with language that says that we have to be made aware. So either way is good with me. So the next thing is in 1.5, which is on page 3, and it said that the charter school is located temporarily at 967 Irwin Street. And staff went ahead and made that change, and I said, I don't want that to look like that's my change because I don't have any authority to make that change. So it's my understanding that it is temporarily there. However, in our initial application, we were told temporarily. So now we're being told permanently, and a lot of things change with that new permanence. It changes where we believed the location was eventually going to be, because I think there was some discussion when they brought the application that it could be closer to where the old Beardsley used to be. Having this school as a permanent location, from all reports that I've been privy to, it's my understanding that this would also change the relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, because previously we were told that the school would be there during the day, and then in the afternoon it would be the Boys and Girls Club. We are now hearing that the Boys and Girls Club is going to push out into the schools, which is also going to raise our expenses, and that this will be a permanent location for the charter school. That's also a concern for folks because there's also a swimming pool at the charter school, and I question whether having a swimming pool, if that's going to be part of their school or not, and if that's going to cause a disparity when we have an all-boys school that has access to a swimming pool and we have no other school with that kind of access. So all of those questions kind of go along with that temporarily. So I think we need some answers to some of those, if we could find any of that out? Do you know any of that?
I do. I had the opportunity to go to their board retreat where they were talking about this. They have a 3-year lease to purchase with a plan to purchase of this. So it is not officially theirs until it is fully purchased at the end of 3 years. They are not planning to use the pool at all.
Okay.
Even fill it with any water is what they stated at their board retreat.
So the pool won't be used by anybody?
No.
Okay. All right.
And once they own it, I know they are going to be doing more construction in different areas for things, but they did not get into that. Those would be further out capital plans for
Okay.
them.
Thank you. So we don't have to worry about a Title IX issue there.
No.
Ms. Pike had a question. Do you want to?
Yeah, I have a question on 1.5, where it says at the bottom of this page, the charter school shall notify the chartering authority at least 30 business days prior to such change of location. 30 business days for a school change, I guess it says at least, but to me, it seems like it should be longer than that. Is this standard that it's just 30 business days?
I don't know if that's a legal reference. I think it would be hard to move a school in 30 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know of any specific legal reference for that. I think that's just what we had. Again, this has been kind of synced with the old Emerald agreement too, and trying to bring it up to date. So, so that's what was in place for Emerald, and it's just been kept.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be taking it back to them, that I might like to see this be 90 days, if possible. 90 business days.
Mr. Triplett?
I don't think we would have any authority to stop them from moving anyway. Is that correct? I mean, if they give us 30 days.
I mean, we are the authorizer.
A
so-
year, 5 years, or 15 minutes, I mean, they can, I don't know that we have any authority anyway, so it's good to be informed, but I don't know that it matters from a.
I don't know that the location would be, topic of discussion. I think more of the topic of discussion may be like what Ms. Owen brought. I mean, does the facility meet the needs? Are they able to conduct school within a new facility? So I think that's probably the more relevant aspect of the notification. Yeah.
And just to let you all know too, as part of our open and monitoring part, we do meet monthly with the charter schools. We also attend their board meetings so that we can stay aware of any of that type of information, because they would be talking about that much in advance of 30 days, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay, on to 2. All right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, just Mr. Triplett's comment, just to make sure I'm understanding. So if we put something in the agreement, you're saying we don't have authority to enforce it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying they can inform us, but the added information, we don't really do anything with that. It was the question I was asking. If they inform us 90 days, are we going to stop them from moving because if they inform us in 10 days before they move, what do we do with that information? Are we changing anything because of that information is the question I was asking. And if we're not, then it really doesn't matter when they inform us.
And just to be clear, I mean, this board would have to approve the change in location. But again, it would be more for, are they able to provide the services that they claim to want to provide? Yeah.
So that was, I wanted to make sure we're clear that if we put something here, it's here for a reason and not just for show. Is that correct? Because I'm just confused by that comment.
No, if you read the next sentence of Reverend Butler, I mean, it says the determination of such location shall be subject to the approval of the chartering authority.
So we do have authority?
So, yeah.
Okay, just to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, so in 2.1, this agreement says that they don't discriminate on the basis of sex, but based on everything that we've been told, that's not true because it's supposed to be an all-boys school, obviously. So my question is, why would it say here that they don't discriminate on the basis of sex when we know that it's an all-boys school? So that seems conflicting. I've also asked several questions in the past that I don't have answers to yet that are related to this, and how much funding we could potentially lose. And so what I've asked, and then I hope we can get by Thursday maybe, is that since we have made this decision to have this charter school as a whole, I would think that that could potentially impact our federal funds, things like federal nutrition dollars, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, and all of those federal grants. So I would like to know if this was found to be a discriminatory school within KCS, how that could impact our federal dollars and how much that impact would be. And if there is actually a court precedent, as I believe Mr. McCarty claimed previously, I'd like to kind of see that. That would be great. And then if we can go on to 2.4.
Mr. Watson had a question in relation to that.
Thank you. Ms. Owen, I think that's a good point, and I appreciate pulling that out in terms of discrimination. I know in the organization that I oversee, we work with federal entities, including HUD, and we're able to discriminate in certain circumstances based on sex. And so I think it is important for us to kind of nuance that and figure out, is that such the case here? Because it would be probably not appropriate if we're saying they don't discriminate, or they're saying they don't discriminate when they do, based on the definition. I mean, in the nuance within the code, because I've seen it in situations where, depending on the circumstance, you actually can discriminate and not lose those federal dollars, depending on what the situation is. So.
And I'll add to that, I was thinking that in the original application that sex was not listed, but I haven't had a chance to look at that yet.
And Ms.
Go on.
I was just going to add to this as well. In State Board Rule 0520-14-01-0.04 for enrollment, Section 3 states a charter school may submit a charter school application that seeks to limit enrollment to a single sex as long as such enrollment proposal is in compliance with federal law. And that was revised June 2023, this summer.
Thank you.
We haven't heard from Ms. Christie. Ms. Christie?
I just have a question for Mr. Duplor, because I know Title IX came up when we originally discussed this. And it was my understanding if something happened where this was deemed a Title IX issue, that one possible solution would be closing the school, right? Did I understand you correctly when you said that?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Christie. Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, we discussed that during the time that the application was pending, and their attorney Chris McCarty did provide some information. What they're claiming is that, sort of like what Mr. Watson's saying, is that they're saying they're not discriminating, but they're also saying that there's an exception under federal law as well as state law. And then the discussion was, well, okay, what if a problem arises? What if there's a court ruling? What if there's an administrative decision from a federal agency? Then at that point, certainly closing the school would be an option that would have to be discussed. So, yes.
Thanks. Ms. Mike, do you have a question for Ms. Owen? Or
I
the section?
don't have a question for Ms. Owen, but I do have a question on 2.3, which might be before 2.5, but I'm okay wherever that needs to go.
Go ahead.
The cost for special education. Reading through this, this bottom line here on this page for this paragraph says the charter school's financial obligation begins once a student has an IEP, and this talks about the process and child find being responsible. I'm really, since this is a 6th through 12th grade school, and typically child find, it seems like, is for like entering Knox County schools before kindergarten, but I know has other things. What would that process look like if they have a student that's in 6th or 7th grade and that doesn't have an IEP or 504, has not been identified, but then the parent or someone is concerned and then brings that up to an S team, what does that S team look like if they are not responsible financially? Because as I understand, then their teachers would be in that S team, but would that be us? What does that look like?
I would like to defer that to Jason Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ms. Bike. Yeah, so the S-team piece of our child find process, the S-team process is a KCS process. So actually, that part of the process, the charter can handle however they want to. Our child find obligation under the IDEA is 3 through age 22. So you'll see in the language here, as it relates to identifying those students, conducting those initial evaluations, KCS, that is the support KCS actually does provide. So our school psychologists go in and do those initial evals. In terms of the costs associated with determining a student eligible under the IDEA, the charter is actually, that is their responsibility. They do get, they get services and they get some staffing, for example, at our current charter school, and we would do the same with the new charter once it's approved. They get support through professional learning. They get support through our special education supervision, behavior liaisons, any of those things that would be typical of any other school in KCS. As it relates to meeting the specific needs of that student, they are obligated to provide appropriate programming for that, for any student with a disability. So the example I always use is a really easy one. If the charter school needed a ramp because a student in a wheelchair enrolled at that charter school, the charter school would need to build that ramp and they would absorb the costs for building that ramp. We are not under any obligation to provide those services for the charter school. But we are there to support through positions that we have in our IDEA budget. That is how we support the charter using those federal dollars.
So if a parent had a concern, they would go to the school first, or would they come to KCS first?
So the process would start at the school. So a parent could still go to the charter school and say, hey, I think my student may have a qualifying disability either under the IDEA or Section 504. The charter then follows their process. We conduct the evaluation. We use our resources to conduct the evaluation.
And for that initial S-team meeting, would any KCS employees be required to be in that?
It's a really good question, and unfortunately the answer is it would kind of depend on where they're at in that process, right? Certainly if they are looking to get permission to evaluate a child, that school psychologist, which would be a KCS employee, should be in that meeting because that's the person who's going to be able to articulate to the family what sort of assessments and what that process of evaluation looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to beat a dead horse, but going back to 2.1 real quick. The school, from what I remember, is roughly 5 years old, correct? The chat prep version of Knox Prep, is that right? 5 years old? You know, the point that's being brought up related to this is a potential federal issue. Do we know of any issues that they've had with the federal government in the past?
In Chattanooga, they also have a girls' school that's all girls. So it's different.
No, I get that, but they don't operate that. And what I'm hearing you saying is that this particular school is potentially discriminating.
The district operates.
I got you.
It's a charter under the school district.
So your concern
So
isn't
they are
with
the
the
same
individual school itself, but you're talking about as an authorizer.
As our school.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
That's my thinking. Okay, so I appreciate Ms. Bike's questions. I had some similar ones that I asked several years ago and never got answered, and I rolled those sort of into the next question, which is about private and non-public schools. So in 2.4, I just asked for some clarity about whether we actually meant private schools or whether we meant non-public schools, which is the way it's written in law. And so I believe staff has changed that to non-public. Did we find that that's correct, or? Okay. So at some point, not as part of this agreement, but separate from this agreement, I would like to see a total list of services that we provide to our non-public schools. sort of enumerated to the board, including any kind of estimated cost for staff time, materials, mileage, the services we provide, with clarity around which of those services we could be required to provide to Knox Prep or Emerald or any other charter school. This is some information that I asked for several years ago about Emerald, and at the time I was basically told we have no idea how much time our staff spends there, which is concerning to me. If at that time we couldn't say how many hours we were sending staff to non-public schools, and it concerns me more now, actually, because I know that we have folks who are going into our schools and checking our teachers and making sure that every teacher on a hallway is saying the exact same words at the exact same time in their reading curriculum. And if we can be that particular about our reading curriculum, we should at least know where our staff is. So that's something that I would like to see board members have access to that information at some point. Then the next thing, in school nutrition, at the end, there was a line that said the parties authorized their respective agents to execute an MOU, and my question there was who would be executing that MOU? Would it just be someone in Knox County Schools and someone with their schools creating an MOU that we would never see? So that has been taken out now. So has that been discussed with them at all? I didn't take this out, so.
In our previous agreement with Emerald, it was with the school nutrition department as well as Knox County, as well as with Emerald, and it was brought to the school board as a typical MOU would be. So the same thing would happen here. I've talked to Ms. Foster, and she is in agreement with conversations around that in order to help ensure that we have the right staffing and the right support if that is the need or the will of Knox Prep to use.
So if they wanted to have an MOU with some other nutrition provider, they would have to come back to us?
No. They can make their own third-party agreement. We would know about it, we would be informed, but we would not vote on it here.
Okay, so the second line where it says if mutually agreed upon, the chartering authority and the charter school may enter a separate MOU. So that is just with us and with our nutrition department. So that's the only part that has to be mutually agreed on, is whether we do it with our folks. And so they could do their own thing without our approval.
Yes, ma'am.
Would we have information on what that agreement would be if they made a separate agreement? Would we see that agreement?
As the chartering authority board, no, not necessarily. It would be public information from their governing board would vote on it, so it should be public information there. But the same as with transportation as well, both school nutrition and transportation, they have the opportunity to enter into their own agreement for their own transportation or school nutrition.
Okay.
But we would not vote on the particulars.
Mr. Dupler, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, so I agree with what Ms. Teresa Nix is saying there, but I was also going to clarify, Ms. Owen, that, these edits were proposed edits, in answer to some of your questions, and of course, Knox Prep would need to weigh in on each of the edits. So, so nothing's set in stone yet, I guess. I just wanted to clarify that.
I just want to be clear to the board that these are not all mine. So that leads me to another transportation question.
Clarification, please.
Yes.
So on number 5, we have the line out red. So if that is something that the staff is recommending, or that's something that Ms. Owens has?
This is not mine.
That's not true. So the lined out, is that something that the board is considering that is?
Well, number 5 came out, Ms. Owen asked a question as to whether or not the board would be able to approve a future MOU, but with the last line in section 5, no, the board would not have to to approve a potential new MOU, it would be done by KCS administration. So, again, I think the question is, one, does this board want to have to approve a future MOU? And two, would Knox Prep agree to that language? So it's just a proposed change. I mean, but again, both sides, both this board and Knox Prep would have to agree to that change.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, in number 6, I have some questions about transportation. It says if the charter school elects to provide transportation, we would have to provide them with the funds that would otherwise have been spent to provide transportation. And I think otherwise is a problematic word there, because those funds are not funds that would change if we are still running those buses. Okay. 8.4 is a new subsection. Looks like it's before 8.3, though. Looks like that needs to be switched. My question in 8.2 was why the reporting of the chartering authority was under complaints. And so there's now been a number added there, but I think that number should be 8.3 and the next one should be 8.4. And if we go all the way down to 12.2, where we're talking about closure, as Ms. Christie talked about earlier, closure and dissolution. I think I would like some clarity that says that if it is found to be a violation, closure would occur, so that there could not be an instance where we would be required to open an additional school to make up for that disparity. So I would like something that made that clearer. Thank you.
Mr. Triplett.
Yes, so I don't mind some of the cleanup changes, but like the future waiver requests, I'm not sure I'm approve that. And I would also disagree with number 5, the school nutrition. The rest of it, a lot of the cleanup I don't necessarily mind. I did have one question about on Mr. Dupler on page 10. It says the scheduling and posting, is that something different? I mean, is that what they're supposed to do anyway?
Yes, that's according to the Open Meetings Act, that's supposed to be done anyway. So again, I would classify that more as some clarifying language.
So again, I don't mind the clarifying language. I think that all makes sense, even the TCA and all that kind of stuff in there. But the future waiver and the school nutrition, I think I would not prefer to be in there. I don't know that I would vote for that. I would rather leave it as is. So. And I don't know how you handle that, Mr. Dupler. I mean, we're not really voting on what you send to them, but at the same time, she may want one thing, I may want something different. I don't know how you handle what you give to them to review. So
I think I can certainly, I mean this meeting's public record, and I can communicate with Knox Prep's counsel and say, hey, these are some proposed changes. I think he'll see the same thing that I do, that some of this is kind of clarifying language, and I don't expect too much pushback on that, but they may have pushback on some of these other changes that we're talking about. And I can just report that at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Horn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree on the on 1.1, any future waiver request shall be approved. I think that needs to match whatever we're doing with Emerald. I don't think that it should be two different things. So if Emerald, if the request for waivers is going through the state, I would think that would be better for it to match and that we be informed.
I agree. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also 1.1, way in there. Mr. Dupler, I'd like to see their board or their attorney see both potential changes. Any future waiver request shall be approved. Ms. Owens' suggested change, or also the possibility of just them informing us. And I think, it sounds like what will happen is you'll go to them, they're going to decide what they can agree to or not. But then to your point, Mr. Triplett, ultimately on Thursday, even if they agree to a change, that doesn't mean we have to approve that change, right? Because certainly they would also agree to keeping it the same, because that's what they presented to us, right? So it's almost like they get first right of refusal, and then we kind of get to take it up from there, like what do you like and what do you don't, so, yeah.
And I'd have to agree with Mr. Triplett. I'm fine with the, kind of cleaning up and kind of clarifying some of the TCA and things like that. But in reference to the future waivers nutrition, I'm fine with the way it is. And like Ms. Horn said, I'm fine leaving it how it's also in the Emerald contract. So, Ms. Nixon, do you have anything else? Go on.
Not on the agreement. I do have one more slide, but
Yeah.
not on the agreement.
I think this has been robustly talked about already. Mr. Reverend Butler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And my comment is not based on any particular decision. It's more of, I don't think the process should be that we do it because we did it with Emerald, because Emerald we have learned something for them. I would like for it to be we do it because that's the best efficient way for us to do it. Because I think that with Emerald, there were some decisions made that we probably have already figured out that we need to do a little bit differently, and we have. And so I think that's my general statement, that we're, in terms of the process, we're not doing it because we did it with them. We're doing it because it's more efficient. Thank you.
Ms. Owen, do you
Thank you,
have
Madam
something
Chair.
else?
I think we need to clarify what we're talking about in number 5, school nutrition, because it was my understanding that staff took that out because they have the ability to do that with their board. And so they took out the piece after I asked the question. So I'm not sure what we're disagreeing with there. So their board can make the agreement. Do we need that last section that says that we need an MOU?
Mr. Diebler.
So that was a recommended change because Ms. Owen, I think staff had a question as to whether or not you felt like future agreements needed to come before the board versus administration. That line doesn't necessarily talk about outside agreements. It talks about, if there's some future agreement that the charter school wants to make with KCS and as it says, redefine the obligations of the parties. So that's what that line's referring to, and if you're okay with that line, then we can leave it in.
I think if their board is making that decision, it doesn't matter either way.
I mean, we can leave that, and then that won't be
I just want to understand
issue.
whether they are making the MOU through just with us and with them, or if they are making outside MOUs. I think that's not necessarily clear that they can make outside MOUs. I mean, it says that they can make an MOU with us, but if they are going to do it with outside parties, I think that needs to be somehow clearer. Because obviously if they can, that language isn't there at all.
It doesn't talk about that specifically. It talks about that it has to be pursuant to state law, so if they do an outside MOU, it has to be pursuant to those qualifications.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, Ms. Nixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last little bit is the third bucket, which is the authorizer column. Just to remind you all that as an authorizer, we are assessed yearly. In this year, we had the opportunity to submit all of our documentation to be reviewed by the state board. Then in the alternating years, so next year, depending on Ms. Madam Chair, Ms. Henderson, was with us on our preliminary report. And I just want to make sure you all are aware that this will be presented to the State Board of Education on February 16th. And they will talk to everyone, and it will be posted on their website about us as an authorizer, so that it is also us being evaluated. And then depending on if we are satisfactory or above, then we will do a self-assessment next year. If we are below, then we have to create a plan, which I will not be creating a plan next year. But we can't talk about what our public record is officially yet. But Ms. Henderson was there with us and was able to represent you all as the board.
It was a great call.
And I look forward to bringing that back to you all in February to inform you all about our charter authorizing. And we plan to post this. We're really working on beefing up our website so that it becomes a much more robust place for people to find not only our schools, but also our own information for transparency as well. Any questions about the authorizer evaluation?
Reverend Butler.
No, I just have a comment. From my neighborhood, we had a game that I didn't do well in called Double Dutch. It was jumping rope. And I just want to commend you because you came into the somewhat of the middle of this with the ropes already moving, and you jumped in and you've double dutched like a champion. So thank you so much for your effort.
Butler. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you do, Ms. Nixon. Thank you
you.
for that. And I just wanted, oh, go on.
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, no. Do you have more? Oh, okay. No. Thank you for all you do. And I just wanted a point of clarification. It was said a couple times in this conversation that, you know, this is a non-public school and that private charter schools are not a thing in Tennessee. The charter schools in Tennessee are public schools run by KCS. So I just wanted to clarify that this is a public school in our district. So